Shall we make a start? So we're going to make a start on Bunny's head, and a good time to talk to you about positioning of which is left and which is right. I don't know why, but this catches me out a lot, and there you go. I've been open and honest with you, don't judge me. So when I'm looking at the bunny, to me this is the right side, but actually if it was Bunny's perspective, that's his left side. So we're working from Bunny's perspective always, okay? So we're going to actually start with the left side of his face and muzzle. So the muzzle is this lovely little part here, okay? But we're going to be working it all in one piece, almost like a little bow tie. So the top part this is where in your pattern you were asked to put a marker for the muzzle, the left muzzle. And down here will be the left cheek, but I'll show you that as we work it. Right, we're going to be working with the yarn A, which is the lovely cream alpaca classic for this part, for the muzzle. And we're going to be casting on 15 stitches. Now I've done a more detailed video on how to do cable cast on, so if you're not too sure about that, pop over and have a little look at the technique video. So it's just, I'm going to tie a knot to begin, and I will be working a cable cast on as follows. So I'm going to knit into the first stitch, knit into the first stitch, pull a loop up and onto the end of my needle, and then put my needle through there and carry on casting on like so. So like I said, I won't spend an awful lot of time doing this on each piece. If you need to know about cable cast on in a more detailed way, please go and have a little look at the video I've made. Okay, there we go. I've got 15 stitches on there now, and I've got to put some stitch markers on to show the positioning. So I've got to put a stitch marker on at his cheek part and his muzzle part, okay? So cheek and muzzle. The first stitch is going to be my cheek marker, and what I've actually got is I've just got some tiny safety pins. I know you've got some amazing stitch markers in your box, and do feel free to use those, but I'm just going to pop safety pins on because they are less intrusive for the videoing, all right? But it's up to you. And what I found is I did like to keep my stitch markers in place, so I did use quite a lot in the end, so I thought safety pins will do that. And I've got silver ones for the left side and gold ones for the right side because I'm fancy. Right, so we're going to put a marker on the first stitch, the very first one we cast on, this one here, and that is going to be the left cheek, and I will show you left cheek again once I've put this on. Oh. All right, so left cheek down here, and the other end, the last stitch, or the 15th stitch if you'd like, is going to be for the left muzzle. And I'm just going to put that there. It's just going to help you when you join a bit later. All right, although I've got to tell you that Claire's photographs and positioning photographs are really, really good and helpful. So I've got a stitch marker at each end, one for the left cheek and one for the left muzzle. Let's do it again. So cheek down at the bottom, muzzle up at the top. All right, you could put different stitch marker for each of those things and make a note if you would rather, but it does become very obvious as you're working where things go, so don't worry too much. At this point, I'm really sorry about my plaster. As is always the case when I come to videoing, I mangle myself in a really hideous way, and I have of course done that by jamming my finger in a window. Of course. Right, sorry. Right, so we are going to immediately decrease, because what you'll see from our muzzle part, and I'm going to use the terrifying not stuffed version here, I do apologise, you will see that our muzzle, and we've just cast on here, you will see that it kind of goes in a little triangle which means we've got to decrease. If we just knit, it won't be a triangle, it will be a rectangle, and we do not want that. So we're going to decrease by knitting 3 and then knitting 2 together. So let's go. We're off. We started 1, 2 and 3, and then just simply knitting the next 2 together. I'm sure you know how to do that, but if you don't, rather than going into that first stitch there, I'm going to go into the second one and put my needle through 2 at once, knit 2 together, and I'm going to repeat that 3 times so that we end up with 12 stitches. So just knitting 3 and then knitting 2 together. So here's my second one. Okay, and then I'm knitting those 2 together. I just pass my needle through like that from right to left just to loosen up my stitches a bit. 1 and 2 and 3, and now we'll be knitting the last 2 stitches together. So going into the end there and knitting them together. Okay, so put that down. You will see, so fluffy. We've now got 12 stitches on our needle. So for every even numbered row, so for rows number 2, 4, 6 and 8, we're just going to purl. So nothing exciting happens on purl rows at all. And we're just going to be decreasing on every knit row. They're very small rows and very small amount of stitches, so there's not a lot to worry about really. But I'm on an even side, even numbered row, and obviously the wrong side of the work, and I'm just going to purl. So there's no decreasing on a purl. So I'll just purl across, and I'll see you at the beginning of the next one. Okay, I'm at the beginning of row 3, which is a knit row, so therefore it's a decrease row, and this time I'm going to knit 2 and then knit 2 together 3 times. That'll take my stitch count down from 12 to 9. So let's just do that. Knit 2, 1, 2 and knit 2 together, and again I'll just kind of put my needle in from right to left to loosen those stitches up a bit. So that's 1, that's 2 and that's 3. Oops, sorry. At the end of the row here, that's 3. Okay, so now we're down to 9 stitches, and I'm going to purl across the back. Okay, I'm at the beginning of row 5, and I have got 9 stitches on my needle, and I'm now going to decrease down to 6 stitches. 6 stitches, that's easy to say, isn't it? And this time I'm just going to knit 1 and then do my decrease by knitting 2 together. I'm going to do that 3 times again. So knit 1, knit 2 together all the way across. That's the second repeat. This is the third repeat. Okay, so we're now down to 6 stitches and of course purling across. So we're down to 6 stitches now, and we are going to decrease all the way across 3 times again, and all that means is we're going to knit 2 together 3 times to bring us down to 3 stitches. So there we are into our first 2. There's a lot of haze on the yarn, so don't worry if you're finding yourself having to find your way with your needle a bit. You'll get used to it, and it's much more robust, the yarn, than you would imagine. It looks delicate and beautiful, but it can take a bit of welly, I can tell you. Okay, so let's have a look there. We're down to 3, and you can see we've created a lovely triangle. And if I hold it that way, and if I show you Bunny's muzzle, or where are you, Bunny? There you go. That part is what we've just made, and we're now going to increase outward to create his right muzzle. So let's just finish up and we'll see how that looks. Right, so I just finished a right side row, so row 7. So I've got a purl across row 8 because that's a wrong, you know, a purl row and an even numbered row. Sorry about the knitting needles clanking on the work surface as I'm doing this. It's quite awkward, I can tell you. Okay, so that's for purl row. Okay, and we're now going to begin the right muzzle. So if I look at it that way on, you can see that little triangle. And we're going to do the equal and opposite action, if you like, by going from a small amount of stitches, increasing up and creating a triangle of more and more stitches each row. Yet again, every wrong side row and even numbered row, so rows 10, 12 and 14, we're going to purl. So nothing exciting to happen there. So our first increase happens on row 9, and we're going to knit front and back into each of those stitches. So knit front and back 3 times. Knit front and back, if you're not familiar, is exactly as the name suggests. So I put my needle in the front of the stitch as I normally would. I wrap it, don't take it off the needle. I then put my needle into the back of the stitch and knit it. Okay, and that you can see I can now take it off. Creates 2 stitches where there was 1 previously. So let's do that again. Knit into the front, wrap, don't take it off, knit into the back, wrap, move it off. So I've now created 2 stitches where there was 1 before, and I'm just going to do that. Whoops, just going to do that one more time. And we'll have doubled our stitch count from a massive 3 to a gymongous 6. Okay, so you can see already the shape starting to appear on the other side of this little, what I think looks like a little white bow tie by the end. Okay, so I'm going to purl the next row, purl row 10, and that is how my increases are going to work all the way through. We're just going to increase the number of stitches between increases, if that makes sense. So on the next knit row, we will be knitting 1, then knit front and back, knit 1, knit front and back, knit 1, and so on, and increasing the stitches between. So knit 2, knit front and back, knit 2, 3, knit front and back, and so on until we get to 15 stitches at the end of row 15. So I'm going to go and do that. I'll just show you one quick knit front and back again. So I'm on row 11 now, and I'm going to knit 1, and I'm going to knit front and back. So into the front of the stitch, wrap, and then into the back of the stitch, wrap, take it off. All right, so I'm going to carry on doing my increases and observing the fact that my even numbered rows are all purl. I'll finish this little bit and see you at the end. Right, I've just finished row 16, which was the purl row, and you can see that I've got like an hourglass type shape going on there, but you will probably realise that it goes this way on to form the front of his little muzzle. Here's my not complete version. You can see, can't you, very clearly that that is that bit that we've just made there. That little bow tie part would sit on there thus. Okay, so it's the very first bit that we've done there. All we need to do now is cast off, and I wanted to show you cast off because this is the one I've used throughout. Really standard basic cast off. So what I'm doing is knitting a stitch to start with, and then knitting another stitch, and then just passing the first one over the second one, which I can't actually get my needle in it because that would be useful. There goes my tummy rumbling. Okay, so passing that second one over the first one, and I'm going to do that all the way along the row. So knit the next stitch along, pick up that first one, put it over the second one. That's just a really standard cast off, you probably know, and that's what I've used throughout. Okay, all the way along at the end, I'm just going to put the last one over that last stitch, and then I'm going to break this yarn, and it breaks really easily, and just pull the end through that stitch. No, come on, just pass the end through, give it a pull. Okay, so now I need to put some markers on this piece as well, and you will remember it goes like so, so sort of bow tie shaped rather than hourglass shape. So I want to mark for my right muzzle and my right cheek. Okay, so right muzzle, right cheek, top part being muzzle, bottom part being cheek. And I've got gold pins to do this. You could easily just use little bits of coloured yarn, pass with a needle through each end, whatever, make a note of it. But it is very nicely, clearly shown on Claire's photograph, so you should be fine. But I've marked the first and the last stitch there. The first stitch down here is the cheek marker, and the last stitch is the muzzle marker. All right, so our very first bit of bunny is done.